Since the beginning, Philadelphia and its surrounding communities have looked after, taken care of, and given back to each other in times of need. All with love. WMMR has lived in the Philadelphia spirit since the Marconi experiment in 1968. We will always put Philly first.
It's now time for the WMMR Public Affairs Show on 93.3 WMMR Philadelphia.
You're listening to 93.3 WMMR. This is Public Affairs. I'm your host, Marcus Goldman. With me today is somebody who was in a few weeks ago to talk about the seedy side of Philadelphia. He is a history professor at Rider University in New Jersey. Dude knows Philadelphia when it comes to history, and that includes the crazy stuff in the month of October. A lot of haunted stuff in this area. His name is Joseph Wojie, and he is here to talk about haunted Philadelphia. Joe, welcome back, and it's good to have you back.
It's exceptional to see you again, Marcus. Thank you for having me on the show.
You bet. So before we start talking about all this haunted stuff, do you want to give us a quick background on what you do for a living, and then we'll jump right into the first part?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I'm a professor at Rider University. I've been there a dozen years in the history department, coordinate some tours with Grim Philly Tours, and we have professors that do all the gritty, awesome, cool stuff. We've got like 9 different tours put together. Serial killers, ghost hunting, some Oktoberfest, seasonal pub crawls that change different themes for gangsters, and Nightmare Before Christmas, and a Moonshine and Valentine Tavern tour of blood, sex, and magic. It's really entertaining, and you know, it's adult oriented, and everybody meets each other and we hang out, and it's a cool, awesome time, and it's unique, it's different. So that's what we do. So I've got a lot of colleagues that are part of that with me, that are professors or authors, and it's a fun time. It's a really cool time.
Do you want to give the website and the phone number to Grim Philly and to any history sites where people might be able to go to get some of this information, and then we'll jump right into it?
Absolutely, yeah. GrimPhilly.com. Grim is with one M, like the Grim Reaper. So GrimPhilly.com. Info@GrimPhilly.com is the email address. 856-829-3100 is the phone number. And by and large, like, we gather our stuff from, JSTOR, Project Muse, legitimate academic sites. We've got primary source stuff that we look at. I mean, we look at a little bit of secondary sources too, and we try to make it entertaining as possible. But what we do is legit sort of academic research that is painstakingly long, to be quite honest, and we just boil it down to its coolest denominator.
Let's jump right into it. The New Jersey Devil is a legend. There's a hockey team named after the New Jersey Devil, and this is a story. It almost seems like there's a little bit of like a New Jersey Hatfield and McCoy in this whole thing. I don't know. What's the story behind the New Jersey Devil?
Well, the Jersey Devil first appeared in 1909 in print, not before, and it coincides actually with, there's a little bit of Ben Franklin actually connected to this, which is kind of cool, being in Philadelphia here. But so the Jersey Devil legend dates, the original birth date of the Jersey Devil traditionally was 1735. As legend goes, on a dark and stormy night in 1735, born to Daniel and Jane Leeds, was this child, the 13th child actually, and was born normal by all accounts, but very quickly turned scaly and red and sprouted horns and glowing eyes and scales and hoof feet, and it just started flying around the room and killed all of the siblings and the mother and the father and the nursemaids, the midwives, and it flew out the chimney into the pine barrens, never to be seen again. Now, there's a couple of variations on the story, actually, depending on which variation that you hear. Some stories have the mother living. It spares the mother, and the mother feeds it periodically, brings food out to the poor for the devil. Different stories have the birth of the devil being in different senses. And so one of the stories is that the Quaker preacher had cursed the mother. Another story had it that a gypsy woman had Mother Leeds, the mother of the Jersey Devil, for a meal, and she said, well, I have this drunk, unemployed husband. I can't spare anything. I've got all these other mouths to feed. I'm sorry. And she curses her womb because she needed a little bit of food. Another more sensational story has Mother Leeds actually being a sorceress and cursing her own womb because, she had too many children. And then the most sensational of the stories has her performing sorcery and just drawing the devil out and copulating with Satan. And so it's Satan's child that flies around the Jersey Pinelands, this frightening woodland creature whose breath it sort of looks a little bit like a dragon, but not quite completely. But it flies around. It doesn't breathe fire, but its breath kills all the birds and the insects in the air. Its urine will kill all the fish in the streams. And it just destroys farmers' crops and gets to the chickens. And it hasn't killed people. That's a good thing. But it's a story that all of the residents of the Pines have always used to scare their children into don't go out into the dark, because the Jersey Devil will get you.
Have there ever been any incidents that have happened where they've thought that the New Jersey Devil might have been involved in the Pine Barrens?
Well, the Jersey Devil's been spotted 2,000 times. There's been 2,000 reported sightings. 1,000 of them were in a week and a half. It started out, it was 1909, and there was a Trenton. It gets into some of the more populated areas at this point. There was a Trenton councilman named Weeder who was the first to report it. I should probably stay in chronological order, though, with the beginnings of it. Some of the more famous people, actually, to spot the Jersey Devil. Stephen Decatur. Have you heard of Stephen Decatur?
I've heard the name.
Commodore Stephen Decatur.
Yes.
Right? From Philadelphia. He's buried in Philadelphia. His family had fled during the occupation by the British in 1777, but he was involved actually in the first Barbary pirate war that we had, and his mission was to go over and burn the SS Philadelphia. Not that he wanted to burn that ship, but it got captured by the Barbary pirates in Tripoli, and rather than have them use it against us, we would want to destroy that ship. So he goes over. His mission is to burn the SS Philadelphia, which had been captured, and the entire crew had been captured as well and ransomed off. It was our first foreign war. Wasn't going extremely well at first, but goes over to inspect some cannonballs that he's going to use to go over and fight in this Barbary pirate war. And he's around the Batstow area. This is Jersey Devil territory, and sees the Jersey Devil on the cannon field, and he shot it dead on with a cannonball. It lived. If it was flying right at him, he shot it, it lived, and it flew off. Later, after Stephen Decatur, you have, everybody knows Napoleon Bonaparte, and when Napoleon was in power, he's putting all his cronies in. So his older brother, Joe, he makes him the Emperor of Spain. And so after Napoleon gets taken out, after the Congress of Vienna, in 1815, his brother Joseph, as well as others who had been connected with him, they get out of Dodge. They don't want to be captured and have the same fate, be exiled or executed, worse. So his brother Joseph fled to the United States, to Philadelphia, actually, and lived in Philadelphia. So the Emperor of Spain, Napoleon's brother, the famous Napoleon, the great general, his brother Joseph is living in Philadelphia, and he decides, well, let me maybe get out of Philadelphia and into somewhere a little more secluded so somebody doesn't kidnap me and take me back and bring me in for justice over in Europe. Goes across the Delaware River, and he settles in Bordentown, New Jersey, which is, it's not totally built up today, but it was really sticks back then. You can go there to his estate today, and there's little underground caverns, like escape routes in case anybody was there trying to capture him. But according to the source I read, he was hunting around, I guess about 5 years later, 1820 or so, and he was hunting in the woods. He saw the Jersey. What I had read was he evacuated himself. So
proper English.
Proper English we use for radio talk. And so these are some of the real famous people to see him. But 1909, God, it was in the paper 1,000 times. Literally, there were 1,000 sightings, and it terrorized a trolley car in Haddon Heights. Collingswood Fire Department sprayed the Jersey Devil off of somebody's roof. The Bristol and the Camden police departments shot at the Jersey Devil. There was reportings in South Philadelphia, all up and down the Delaware River, both sides of the river.
Whoa.
It was probably sensational journalism. Back then, people wanted to sell papers, This is 1909. The Philadelphia Zoo actually put out a reward for the Jersey Devil. Anybody that could capture the Jersey Devil alive so they could put him on display could get $10,000. They've never actually rescinded that either. So so if you catch a Jersey Devil, you can get $10,000.
Is it $10,000 prorated to today's money?
Still
straight $10,000.
Still $10,000.
Not like 10,000 in gold bullion or silver money or anything like that from back in those days, silver bills or anything.
Well, back in the day, speaking of silver, pieces of 8. Well, a little bit before that though. Pieces of 8, Spanish pieces of 8 silver, were actually the worldwide currency, kind of like the American dollar. Interesting.
It is interesting. Now, if the devil doesn't exist. How did so many people see him?
Well,
not him, but it, because it isn't it.
The devil was probably, like, if you look at the real story behind the devil, it's probably going to have been perhaps a child that was born with a deformity. People had been a lot more superstitious back then, and then they would have thought that they were marked by God, cursed by God for some unholy reason. And if you would have had a child like that, you may have kept that child in and away from a lot of others. So there could have been rumors that went around. In fact, though, Daniel Leeds, who would have been, the baby was a Shrouds and a Leeds baby. And yeah, actually, I believe it was like 2003, if I'm not mistaken, or 2005. CBS News went down and started interviewing people from, descendants of the family to try to, they just kind of trace the origins of it and everything. But so you would have had a publishing war, actually, between the new upstart Ben Franklin with Poor Richard's Almanac, which would have came out around the traditional birth date of the Jersey Devil, just 2 years before, actually. And Daniel Leeds had created Leeds Almanac. Now, Daniel Leeds, these stories, the legends of the Jersey Devil, have him being this drunken, unemployed scoundrel, which he's not, really, but he's a loyalist. So to all the patriots, of course he's a scoundrel. So, so things, over time get said more and more about him. He was actually, if you look at Lord Cornbury, was the first New Jersey governor appointed by the crown. This is in the 1600s. So it was actually before the legends kind of state, because his son, Titan Leeds, would have been in charge of the almanac and family business by that point of the traditional birth date of the devil. But Daniel Leeds, the traditional sort of father of the Jersey Devil, was a councilman, actually, for this governor appointed by the crown. He was a loyalist. He had originally been a Quaker, and the Quakers disown him. The Quakers over in Jersey, the Quakers over here in Philadelphia, they disown him because when he created that Leeds Almanac, it sounded a little too pagan to them. He incorporated into that some astrological stuff to predict how the crops would grow and such. And to his chagrin, he apologized publicly for it, but to his chagrin, they wanted to collect all of the unsold almanacs and burn them all. And he was like, well, wow, publishing costs a lot more money back then than it does now. And that was a big hit. Not only would he not have gained the profit, but he would have lost the money that he had paid to print these things. And it was very expensive back then. So it infuriated him. And he wound up doing another publication and tearing up Quakers and just talking a lot of bad things about Quakers. And then that's obviously when he broke with them and he converted to Anglicanism, sort of like Governor Keith here in later, who he supported for Pennsylvania governor, who had put the warrant out for the arrest of Blackbeard. Actually, that was that governor. He had done the same. He had started out Quaker and kind of converted to the Anglican Church of England. So there was this publishing war between Ben Franklin and Daniel Leeds. And Franklin, actually, he was new at the game. He had a lot of fun with it, actually. And so Titan Leeds, he had been the eldest son of Daniel Leeds. He took over the family business and the almanac, the Leeds Almanac. And Leeds Point, the traditional birthplace of the devil, is named after the Leeds family, who came from Leeds, England, and surveyed the land, actually, down there, Daniel had. But so Titan Leeds took it a little bit more seriously than Franklin. He's already the one that's established. But Franklin's here in a bigger population center, does a lot better, he's a lot more creative, he's intelligent, but he has a lot of fun with it. He predicted, actually, he said, I predict, and this is the second year of publishing Poor Richard's Almanac, he says, I predict Titan Leeds will die. He's going to drop dead. I will use astrology. He's just screwing around, right? He says, I'm going to use astrology to predict that Titan Leeds will die on the 17th of October in 1735. That's the birth of the Jersey Devil. And of course, the date comes and goes, and he doesn't die. And Franklin says, no, he died. That's his ghost pestering me. And honest Titan would never publish things that are so terrible as that. That must be some specter from beyond the grave. No, it's not even him, But his ghost haunts. So he's been accused of being a ghost by Ben Franklin. Just having fun with it. And so, additionally, though, one of the things that is quite interesting is that Titan Leeds redesigned the family masthead, which had already had a creature on it that looked conspicuously like what the Jersey Devil looks like.
Really?
It's a creature with wings, with like dragon wings. And he redesigned it to put 3 of them on the family crest, and it sort of embraced it a little. And so this winds up being what the Jersey Devil depictions are. It's crazy because when you look at when you jump forward to the sightings of the Jersey Devil in 1909 and the Philadelphia Zoo putting out their award for it, And as a sidebar, the Philadelphia Zoo, this is a time of political incorrectness. Oh my God. They can see the ticket sales that were brought in by these kind of things. So the Philly Zoo thought, well, it's not politically incorrect to find the Jersey Devil. Let's put a reward out for this thing, you know? And lo and behold, like a couple years later, it was 1911, and the Jersey Devil is spotted Fairmount Park.
What?
And you've got dozens of people crawling around the park, combing Fairmount Park with nets and such, and they capture him. They capture, it's in all the papers, okay? It's in the Philadelphia Public Ledger. They capture the Jersey Devil. They don't sell him to the zoo because the 9th and R Street Museum pays more money for him. It's a mini P.T. Barnum type exhibit of crazy stuff. Think P.T. Barnum, but a little bit scaled back. And here in Philadelphia, you know, so like, you know, we're looking at what New York's doing, and we're trying to do the same sort of thing and, you know, get ticket sales for these sensational things. So for a dime, for 10 cents, you could get in and see the Jersey Devil. And it's a nocturnal creature. It's only seen at night. Go in, he's always angry because he's the Jersey Devil. He's volatile. He's dangerous. He's in an iron cage, and they have him in iron shackles and a big iron collar and chains inside an iron cage. And they finally in one at a time so you can get out quickly if he breaks out of all of these iron chains and the cage. And unlike, I guess, the Otabenga exhibit up in the Bronx, you didn't get as much value because it was a fraud. It was a complete fraud. It was found out to be. Oh my God. And the days before PETA, you know, I mean, the things that they would do, it came out that it was a kangaroo. That what they did was they painted the poor thing red. They put fake horns and wings on it, and they kept the room dark so you couldn't see it very well. And then before you walked, they would poke the poor thing with a stick, and so it would jump around. It was a little, you know, it was kangaroos. It would jump around the cage a lot. They would say, oh, you got to get out real fast. And it would finally out very quickly. But yeah, so unfortunately, the Jersey Devil has never been captured. The last reported sighting was in 1998 along the Mullica River by a forest ranger down there in Warden State Park named John Irwin, who reported seeing him. But yeah, of course, today he's got his own hockey team and drinks and bars are named after him. He's got his own wine, I saw.
Are there any videos or pictures of him, of people saying that they have seen him?
I've seen a bunch of stuff on the internet, but it looks very photoshopped to me, conspicuously so.
What about places like in Winslow Township? You have the Blue Hole, that little lake that's supposedly bottomless, the little hole of water, and supposedly you see the devil there once in a while. I've heard stories of that. Are there any tie-ins to that with the devil?
Well, you're supposed to be sucked to the bottom of it if you go swimming in there. I think the devil, I'm not sure if it's the devil or not, but you'll be sucked to the bottom of that. There's that definite legend there.
As far as the New Jersey Devil goes, is there anything else that we need to know or be on the lookout for?
Well, I would say it's one of the possible explanations of when people do see the Jersey Devil, a lot of time, I mean, because you'll see something and people report sightings. So they're not reporting a sighting just because there's a legend. They must be seeing something. And one of the possible explanations is that people have cited the Sandhills crane, which it's not endangered, but it used to be indigenous to our area. It's still in Nebraska, mostly, but Mississippi as well. And it's an awkward-looking, more ground bird that trots around, and it's got a 7-foot wingspan. So hearing about the Jersey Devil legend, possibly seeing this at night, it's out later in the day, a lot of times when people see it, it makes this, like, hissing sound. Anytime where it's scared, it makes these crazy kind of hissing sounds that may be unusual for someone.
Okay.
Having heard of the Jersey Devil story, they may mistake that for the Sandhills crane. I think there was a cab driver in the 90s who had he had a flat tire on Route 9 and out that in the Jersey Devil kind of territory and reported sighting it, that the Jersey Devil landed on the roof of his cab, and more than likely that's what it may have been. I mean, I think it would be unusual for the Sandhills crane to have landed on the roof of his cab. And people generally exaggerate, too. So if you see something maybe in the dusk that has a 7-foot wingspan, to you it may look like 14 foot, in hindsight, because you're scared and you're a little further off.
Now, were there any marks on that guy's cab or anything like that? Because if the New Jersey Devil comes out of the sky and lands on the roof of his car, there's going to be dents.
Well, this serpent creature that flies through the air, a little dragon such, I would think so. Yeah, I'm sure there was markings on it. I don't think it were dents, though. It'd been more like scratches.
Let's move closer to Philadelphia, because with the history, we talked about the pirate influence, and I'm sure we go back to the Viking influence as well, because they had been here way before Columbus and them crossed over as well. And so you've got those tie-ins, and you've got the Native American tie-ins and the war tie-ins. So there's all this rich history that lies into it. Give us some ideas of some of the haunted stuff in Philadelphia that maybe people don't know about.
The Vikings obviously were here first. We could be calling Columbus Boulevard here, Radnor Lothbrook Boulevard, perhaps. Would be more fair, but the Delaware River, just for the sheer number of sort of pirates and the things that kind of happen on the Delaware River, it's got a great, rich, haunted history, from Blackbeard to this another pirate, John Bowman. You've got a connection to another pirate story with Rachel Wall. She was the first female-born American pirate, female to choose a life of piracy, and she was from Carlisle, Pennsylvania. She's supposed to haunt as well. And there's a connection with one of the members of William Kidd's crew that's supposed to haunt up in Margate, actually. And William Kidd came to Philadelphia as well. But the Delaware River, it was a real colonial sort of frontier city there was a lot of lawlessness in the beginning. People were living on the embankments of the Delaware River when Penn arrives with maybe 100 people, and there's maybe close to 1,000 Swedes and Finns that are already here. But so you had a lot of pirate activities, a lot of pirates that lived here. Adam Berth, George Thompson, Edmund Du Castel, William Orr. These are guys that lived here. A little less famous than Blackbeard, who comes here. But so the pirates would come here to actually, sell their wares, not necessarily to rob, but to sell their wares. And one of the things that they would do, and it goes back to a Viking practice. Now, pirates, their average career expectancy, you're looking at like the average career expectancy of like a cat burglar. It's about the same. It's like 6 years. Blackbeard's God was only 2. It's very short. But they would rob and pillage. And a lot of the things that we see as a little bit cheaper today were very expensive back then. Sugar and tea and things like that they would steal from the hull of the ship. They would auction off at the Old London Coffee Shop here in Philadelphia, front and High Street's Market Street today. Twice weekly they would do this, but they would keep the bigger, or rather more expensive and small things for themselves. They would keep, your silver spoons but your gems, your jewels and stuff like that. It's not a legend only, it's definite truth that the pirates would bury treasure. It's weird to think about it, but it's like a 401k plan.
Yeah.
It's your retirement. It's your Social Security. As a pirate, you want to bury some treasure. And there is, it goes back to the Vikings. Like you said, pirates during the golden age of piracy, they saw themselves as like badass warriors on the water like the Vikings were. So they copied some of their practices. Now, the Vikings would always bury their gold, and what they would do is kill a younger Viking, somebody that had been initiated. They had their, when Vikings are initiated, once they kill in battle, prove themselves in battle, they'll get these gold sort of arm bands, like the lower part of their arm, as a mark that you're sort of initiated into, the brotherhood. You're a man now. You can be 13, but you're a man now. You've proved yourself in battle. And so what they would do is generally, like some of the chieftains would do this, they would gather up some riches and they would bury them. And they would kill one of the younger Viking warriors and bury them with that treasure. If anybody tried to find that treasure and dig it up, ghost of that young Viking warrior would guard that treasure, would be tied forever to it. They were looking to go to Valhalla. They were looking to die on the battlefield. The Valkyries will take them up and they'll get to eat and feast with Odin for an eternity. Vikings' practices of doing that were copied by, all of the pirates, basically, like William Kidd. He did the same thing when he buried his treasure. Blackbeard did the same thing when he buried his treasure. And Blackbeard, nobody's ever found his treasure. And he was here, he frequented this place. Both of those guys would stay. There was a hotel at 2nd and Market Street, and it burned down in the 1830s. It's a dog park today. It's not there now. It's right next to Christ Church. It's the main intersection in town. As a sidebar, Stephen Gerrard actually got run over by a cart that was pulled by a pony, or rather a horse, right at that corner. Cut his ear off. The guy was 80 years old, mad at a bunch of gravel in his face. He didn't die of his wounds. Walked home on his own. Died the next year. He was old, but he didn't die of those wounds or anything. But so Blackbeard, legend had it, buried his treasure on the banks of the Delaware. And when you think about the way the city looked back then, it's not this bustling metropolis than it is today. What's there? 1.5 million people, I think, in the downtown area, maybe 5.8 million in the metro area. If you include the burbs, and it's a wilderness. It is a frontier city. Especially the Schuylkill. The Hidden River. It's Dutch, and in Dutch means Hidden River. That really has nothing on it, and even the Delaware has nothing. Well, very little, we should say. So a lot of people thought that Blackbeard buried his treasure along the banks of the Delaware. I mean, they've looked for Blackbeard's treasure all over. I mean, they've looked in Georgia, in the Caribbean, Ocracoke Island, where they found some of his artifacts from his one ship that he sunk, the Queen Anne's Revenge. He sunk that because everybody basically recognized it was such a big ship, and oh my God, this ship with black sails is coming toward us, because they would dye their ship's sails with oxblood red, so that when they attacked you and the sun was at their back at dusk or dawn, they would blend in with the horizon, and the pirate hunters were looking for them at night. They wouldn't see big white sails. They'd be almost black against the night skies. It was like a foreboding, fearful thing. You saw Blackbeard's ship. So he was like, well, everybody sees my ship at this point. They run away. I got to go ground that ship and get another. So he stole another ship, and he renamed it just the Revenge, just a shortened version of it. In any case, people have looked everywhere for this treasure. And there's in legend, they asked him what he did with his treasure before he died. Not that he would say, hey, let me draw you a map to my treasure. Yeah, he's not going to do that. He says, that's between the devil and me.
Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we're going to have to stop there. But we will continue on the Day of the Dead next Sunday with our interesting conversation about the hauntedness of Philadelphia and the surrounding areas. You're listening to 93.3 WMMR. This is Public Affairs. I'm your host, Marcus Goldman. If you would like more information about haunted Philadelphia, feel free to email me, marcus@WMMR.com. Thank you so much for listening. Have a happy Halloween and enjoy your Sunday.
The WMMR Public Affairs Show is locally written, recorded, and produced by your host, Marcus Goldman, with topics that relate to the WMMR listening area to better serve and inform the WMMR family. Thank you for listening, and we invite you to tune in